Things on the Florida shooting. One is you got a text from a business owner says he'd check social media before he hires somebody, right? And that's
Yeah.
supposed to be a comparison to having social media police do background checks on social media before the issuance of a FOID card or the approval of a purchase of a gun and so forth. Okay, let's try and understand something here. There's a difference between a private transaction, like an employer making an employment decision, and the state in the position of arbiter of social media content. Do you understand the difference? No, do you understand the man hours that would be required for that? And then who checks the checkers when it comes to making judgment calls on social media? Um, so it,
But anyone who took a look at his social media
I
would have
understand that.
denied him even
I
not only a
understand that.
job, but also a weapon.
The point is to have as I said before, to have a conversation about a secondary check level. The real issue is not the social media, although that's an issue because the FBI was tipped off. The real issue is 39 police visits to his home. That's police action. So a secondary level check, if you've had the police to your home and this is all archived information, then that would be something that perhaps you'd set that application aside and you would say, well, we need a special investigative arm of the background check to
go
look into this more deeply, to contact local law enforcement. Let's put a hold on this one until we get more information.
Yeah,
That's much different than making judgment calls on Facebook posts.
Right. Well, there was never a restraining order or any charges filed against them. They just
That's
visited the home that many times.
That's
and
the issue.
Expelled 3 times, and it's awful.
Right. Had there been arrests, it would have been a different issue.
Yeah, he would have never been able to purchase the gun.
The other thing, just to note on this too, is the compassion of the left. Andrew Pollock posted on social media yesterday. He and I think his wife in their car. He's holding up a picture of his daughter Meadow, and he was searching for her yesterday. He then, searching for her Wednesday. He then yesterday found out that, quote, she's gone. Meadow Pollock was one of the 17 that were murdered in Florida. And by the way, the picture of Andrew Pollock, he's wearing a Trump 2020 T-shirt.
Which is what he happened to be wearing that day.
Yeah, and so the response on social media was
God,
things like, "I'm sorry for his loss, but his T-shirt, his hero rollback background checks for those with mental illness, as if that's relevant. Maybe he should have thought twice before voting for terrorist Trump. The sad irony with his shirt."
Oh, stop. People are sick. Leave him alone.
They are sick. They are sick. And not in a clinical sense, in a depraved sense. For more on the school shooting and the calls for Congress to act and a range of other issues, we're pleased to be joined again by our friend Peter Roskam, Congressman from the Western Burbs. Peter, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Dan, Amy, thanks for having me on today.
So, there's a lot of, you've had Connecticut Senator Chris Murphy say it's Congress's fault that this happened, and essentially say that in Parkland, Florida, and others suggesting that Congress has failed to act. Trey Gowdy, your colleague, said, show me the law that will prevent the next one of these, and I'll sign on to it. But nobody's shown him that law yet. Where do you come down on all this?
Yeah, I think Gowdy has a great deal of insight on this, and I go to the work of now a former colleague, Tim Murphy, who stepped aside a couple months ago. But Tim Murphy was really driving the national discussion on Capitol Hill as it relates to mental illness and to be very forward-thinking. And Murphy put it in a way that I think was easy to relate to. He said, look, some people want to take all guns away from everybody. And he said, we want to make sure that we take guns away from certain people. And that's the discernment that we need here. And I think the way Trey Gowdy framed it up, that's a simple thing. I mean, it's a clear framing of the issue. That said, I mean, this is just an overwhelming and heartbreaking situation as you're looking at this, and you think, wow, as the fraying comes in our culture and this becomes more and more normative, it is a real challenge. So I don't think anybody comes into this with hubris saying, oh, here's the one easy thing that we're going to do that's going to fix these situations. This is a crisis. It's a cultural crisis that everybody's trying to get their hands around.
Well, what do you think about raising the purchasing age for an AR-15 from 18 to 21? Because you have to be 21 to buy a pistol. Why can't you be 21 to buy a semi-automatic?
Yeah, so then you get into the same discussion, Amy, about, okay, well, if we're going to do that, then is somebody in the military and unable to buy one of these things? You know what I mean? If you can serve your country when you're 18 and sacrifice yourself, do you not have this right? And so that is wherein lies the tension. And I don't think that this is necessarily a youthful thing. It's not as if the vast or the overwhelming majority of people who have committed these crimes have done so at this young age. You look at up and down the spectrum. So I would focus in on mental health and trying to be proactive as opposed to being confiscatory towards a group of people based on age.
Other topics Congress is attempting to tackle includes a deal on DACA and border security. That went nowhere fast in the Senate yesterday. 4 different versions of a deal shot down by members of the Senate. And that much to the chagrin of Mitch McConnell. What do you think the prospects are for something approximating what Trump proposed in terms of a deal on DACA/border security?
Yeah, I think it is so fascinating. So you look at all the chest pounding on the part of the left over the past couple of months, and they've really lost their way. I mean, number one, they shut the government down in order to move forward on DACA and realized the country was not with them. And now, as they're trying to make proposals, I think they're really they didn't calculate on Donald Trump basically saying, okay, I'll see your proposal and I'll raise your proposal, and that. This is a group, remember, that when Pelosi was Speaker and Reid was the leader and Obama was in the White House, they could have done anything they wanted on this issue, but they chose not to. Why did they choose not to? Because they want the issue. There's a group of them that want the issue. They don't want a remedy. And so this is a group that has a very hard time saying yes for an answer.
Senator Cruz said yesterday on Fox and Friends that, look, if we do amnesty, and I think he may have been even in a part of a deal, but if we do amnesty, we're going to lose Congress, and Speaker Pelosi will then impeach Donald Trump. I guess there's 2 parts to that question. Number one, do you think if Republicans lost the House, they would move on impeachment? And number 2, do you think the deal that's cut, if there is a deal to be cut, will be impactful in terms of who controls the House after November?
I think it depends on what Donald Trump's disposition is on this. I was talking with a member of Congress yesterday who represents a district that Trump got, in the high 70s and has an approval rating that is just skyrocketing. And he said, look, if Donald Trump came out and said this is a good deal, he said my political base at home would celebrate it and they would be with him. It's just sort of a personality phenomenon on that. So I think Trump has the capacity of putting an imprimatur of approval on something that others couldn't. The old only Nixon could go to China observation. What happens if Nancy Pelosi is Speaker of the House in the next Congress? The pressure that would come from the left on the Democrats to move, on an impeachment resolution, I think, would take people's breath away. And I think that the whole dynamic of the Trump presidency would fundamentally shift. And if they didn't move articles of impeachment, they would be whistling up every administration official for investigation after investigation after investigation, and it would completely hamstring the goals of the administration.
He is Congressman Peter Roskam, 6th District out in the Western Burbs. Peter, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Listen to